Your 2-year-old looks right at you when you ask them to put their toys away, then walks past you as if you never spoke. Your 4-year-old nods when you explain why hitting isn't okay, then does it again 5 minutes later. Your baby cries and you talk to them in your normal voice trying to soothe them, but they only cry harder. And you start wondering if something is wrong with your child, if they have a hearing problem, if they're just being defiant. But what if the problem isn't that they won't listen? What if the problem is that you're speaking a language their brain literally cannot process yet? Neuroscience has discovered something remarkable about how young children's brains understand communication. It turns out that everything you were taught about talking to kids, all the normal conversation patterns you use, are completely backwards for developing brains. Today we're exploring why your child seems to ignore you, what's actually happening in their brain when you speak, and the specific techniques that transform frustrated parents into parents whose children genuinely listen. This isn't about stricter discipline or louder voices. This is about understanding how a young child's brain receives and processes language, and matching your communication style to their developmental reality. The first thing you need to understand is that your child is not a small adult. Their brain is fundamentally different from yours in how it processes information. When you speak to another adult, you can use complex sentences, talk quickly, reference abstract concepts, and expect them to follow along. But a child under 5 has a brain that's still building the neural pathways required for language comprehension. Dr. Patricia Kuhl, a leading researcher in early language development, has shown through brain imaging studies that babies and toddlers process language in completely different regions of the brain than adults do. The parts of their brain responsible for understanding complex grammar and abstract meaning are still under construction. What does work in their brain? The parts that process tone, rhythm, facial expressions, and emotional content. This is why a baby will stop crying when they hear a soothing voice even if they don't understand the words. It's why a toddler responds to how you say something long before they understand what you're saying. This creates a fundamental mismatch. You're speaking in a way that requires parts of the brain they haven't developed yet. You're using sentences that are too long, vocabulary that's too complex, speed that's too fast, and delivery that doesn't match how their brain receives information. It's like trying to play a Blu-ray disc in a VCR. The technology doesn't match. The message isn't getting through. And then you get frustrated because you think they're choosing not to listen, when in reality their brain is simply overwhelmed by input it cannot process. Psychologist Lev Vygotsky, who studied how children develop language and thinking, discovered that children learn best when communication happens just slightly above their current level, but not so far above that it becomes noise. Most parents accidentally communicate way above that zone. They use their normal adult speech patterns and wonder why their child tunes out. So what does work? The research is remarkably clear and surprisingly specific. First, you have to get down to their physical level. When you tower over a small child and speak down to them, you're asking their brain to do multiple things at once. Process your words, manage the physical intimidation of your size, deal with the fact that they can't see your face clearly, and respond appropriately. That's cognitive overload for a developing brain. But when you kneel or sit so your eyes are at the same level as theirs, something shifts. Suddenly they can see your facial expressions clearly. Your voice comes from the same level as their ears instead of above. The size difference stops being threatening. Their brain can focus on your message instead of managing the stress of your physical presence. Researchers studying parent-child communication have found that eye-level communication dramatically increases a child's attention span and comprehension. It's not a nice suggestion. It's a neurological necessity for effective communication with young children. Next, you have to slow down. Not just a little. Way down. Adult conversation typically happens at about 150 to 200 words per minute. But studies of effective parent-child communication show that children under 5 process language best at about 60 to 80 words per minute. That's less than half your normal speaking speed. When you slow your speech to match their processing speed, you give their brain time to receive each word, attach meaning to it, connect it to previous words, and build comprehension. When you speak at normal adult speed, words just blur together into sound. They can't separate where one word ends and another begins. They can't attach meaning fast enough. So they stop trying. Their brain gives up and they appear to ignore you. But they're not ignoring you. They're drowning in a flood of information coming too fast to process. The words you choose matter just as much as your speed. A child under 5 has a vocabulary of anywhere from 50 words at age 2 to about 2,000 words at age 5. Compare that to the 50,000 words you probably know as an adult. When you use words outside their vocabulary, you lose them immediately. But even more importantly, you need to use concrete words tied to things they can see, touch, or experience right now. Abstract language, hypotheticals, references to the future or past, these require cognitive abilities that young children are still developing. When you say, if you don't clean up now, you won't be able to watch your show later, you've asked them to imagine a future scenario, understand a conditional consequence, and modify current behavior based on something that hasn't happened yet. That's advanced cognitive processing. A 2-year-old's brain simply doesn't work that way yet. What works instead? Pick up the red block. Put it in the box. Good. Now the blue block. Concrete, immediate, one step at a time. This matches how their brain processes information. One of the most powerful techniques comes from research on language acquisition. Dr. Roberta Golinkoff, who studies how children learn words, discovered that children learn fastest when adults narrate what's happening in the moment using simple, repetitive language. This means describing what you're doing as you do it, and describing what they're doing as they do it. I'm washing the plate. See the soap? White soap on the blue plate. Now rinsing the plate. Clean plate. This might feel ridiculous to you. It might sound like you're talking to yourself. But to a young child's brain, this is exactly what it needs. You're connecting words to concrete actions they can observe. You're repeating key words. You're using simple sentence structure. You're building the neural pathways that connect language to meaning. This technique, sometimes called sportscasting, has been shown to dramatically accelerate language development and comprehension in young children. Parents who narrate their actions throughout the day have children with significantly larger vocabularies and better language skills than parents who only speak to give instructions or answer questions. But communication isn't just about you talking. It's about creating a genuine exchange. When you pause after speaking and wait for your child to respond, even if their response is just a look, a sound, or a gesture, you're teaching something profound. You're teaching them that communication is a two-way process. You speak, then they speak or respond. This turn-taking pattern is fundamental to all human conversation, but young children don't automatically understand it. They have to learn it through practice. Research by psychologist Catherine Snow, who studies parent-child communication, shows that parents who consistently pause and wait for responses, even from babies who can't speak yet, raise children who become better communicators. These pauses do something else too. They give the child's brain time to process what you said and formulate a response. Remember, their processing speed is much slower than yours. If you ask a question and expect an immediate answer, you're not giving their brain enough time to work. But if you ask, then wait 5 or 10 seconds while maintaining eye contact and an expectant expression, you give them space to think and respond. This patience is hard for adults who are used to rapid-fire conversation. But it's essential for genuine communication with young children. Your tone carries more information than your words, especially for children under 3. Before a child fully understands language, they're reading your emotional state through your voice. Psychologist John Bowlby, who developed attachment theory, explained that babies and toddlers are constantly monitoring their caregivers for emotional safety signals. A harsh, frustrated, or angry tone triggers their stress response, even if the words themselves aren't scary. When their stress response activates, the thinking parts of their brain shut down. They literally cannot process instructions or information when they feel emotionally unsafe. This is why yelling at a young child to listen almost never works. The volume and harsh tone activate fear, which shuts down comprehension. What works instead is a warm, calm, slightly slower tone that communicates you are safe. I am not a threat, you can trust what I'm saying. This doesn't mean you can't be firm. It means firmness needs to come through clear boundaries and consistent follow-through, not through vocal intimidation. A calm, warm voice saying, "I won't let you hit," while physically stopping the hitting teaches the boundary far more effectively than yelling about it. Repetition is not your enemy. It's your most powerful tool. Adults get bored saying the same thing multiple times. We assume if we said it once, that should be enough. But children's brains require massive amounts of repetition to build neural pathways. When you say something once, a weak connection forms in their brain. When you say it 10 times, that connection strengthens. When you say it 100 times in slightly different contexts, that connection becomes permanent. This is how learning happens in a developing brain. Psychologist Mary Ainsworth, who studied how children develop secure attachments, found that parents who patiently repeated instructions, explanations, and expectations had children who ultimately became more independent and better at following directions. The repetition wasn't creating dependence. It was building understanding. So when you have to tell your 3-year-old for the 20th time to use gentle hands with the cat, you're not failing as a parent. You're participating in the normal process of how their brain learns. Each repetition strengthens the neural pathway connecting the words gentle hands with the physical action of soft touching. Young children are also highly responsive to what you pay attention to. They naturally want your attention and approval. This creates an opportunity. Instead of only speaking to them when they're doing something wrong or when you need them to do something, narrate and acknowledge what they're doing right. You're stacking those blocks so carefully. I see the red block on top of the yellow block. You're being so gentle. This kind of commentary does multiple things. It builds their vocabulary by labeling what they're doing. It reinforces positive behavior through attention. It teaches them that you notice their efforts. And it creates a relationship context where your words carry positive associations instead of just being linked to corrections and demands. Children are far more likely to listen to someone they associate with positive attention than someone they only hear from when something is wrong. The physical environment matters too. Trying to communicate important information when a child is hungry, tired, overstimulated, or in the middle of intense play is setting yourself up for failure. Their brain doesn't have the capacity to shift attention and process your message when they're in those states. This is why bedtime instructions often seem to go in one ear and out the other. Their brain is depleted from the day's activities. What works better is choosing your timing strategically. Important instructions or conversations should happen when they're fed, rested, and not engaged in something else. This isn't always possible, but being aware of their state helps you understand why they might not be able to listen in certain moments. It's not defiance. It's biology. As children get closer to 5, their language comprehension increases dramatically, but they still need modified communication compared to adults. 4- and 5-year-olds can handle longer sentences and more complex ideas, but they still benefit from concrete language, slower speech, and clear step-by-step instructions. They're also developing the ability to understand explanations, which is powerful. When you explain why something matters in simple terms connected to their experience, they're more likely to remember and follow through. We hold hands in the parking lot because cars are big and can't always see you. Holding hands keeps you safe. This connects the rule to a concrete reason they can understand. Over time, these explanations build their capacity for reasoning and internal motivation, but only if the explanations are simple enough for their developmental level. The techniques we've discussed, getting at eye level, slowing your speech, using simple and concrete language, narrating actions, pausing for responses, maintaining a warm tone, repeating patiently, and choosing your timing, these aren't about making your child obedient. They're about creating genuine communication where information actually transfers from your brain to theirs. When you match your communication style to how their brain actually processes information, something remarkable happens. They start to truly listen because they can truly understand. The frustration on both sides decreases. The connection deepens. And over time, as their brain develops and these patterns become established, communication becomes easier and more natural. You're not just getting them to follow instructions in the moment. You're building the foundation for them to become people who can listen, process information, communicate clearly, and have healthy relationships with others throughout their lives. If this changed how you think about communicating with young children, share it with another parent who's struggling to be heard. And subscribe for more psychology content that helps you understand how children's minds actually work so you can parent from knowledge instead of frustration.